first episode of TNFro is reading and actually watching stuff. Hi, I'm your host, Felicia Baxter. In this day, I make apologies for getting Valentine's Day, as well as how completely blown away I am with the photograph with Issa Rae, as well as Zoe Kravitz's new work on Hulu, High Fidelity, and my answers to the interview by the book in this past Sunday's New York Times book review. So, join me as I explore other mediums and write about it and my feelings. And thank you for joining me. And I hope you enjoy this episode just as much as I've enjoyed creating it. Thanks. One of my most favorite things to do on the weekend, besides making myself get out of my house, is to pick up the Sunday New York Times. Yes, it is electronic, but I like the feel of paper. And the old gray lady makes me happy. But I go right to arts and entertainment, travel section, as well as the book review. Maybe one day I'll write something worthy of being showcased in the book review. And also maybe being interviewed. This week, there was a by the book interview that I actually basically stole the questions and answered them myself, and I wanted to share it with you guys. What books are on my side table? Ida, The Sword Among Lions, Stephen King's The Stand, High Fidelity, in homage to Zoe Kravitz's newly released series on Hulu, which is playing in the background as we speak. High Fire, about a vodka swilling, flash dance loving dragon that lives in the Louisiana Bayou. And I've had to think about the last great book that I've read. And that's actually a toss-up because I've read several books. And if you read literature or just fiction in general, you want it to basically allow you to suspend disbelief. I haven't had a book really do that with as much gravity. And I'm looking at my book list and I'm Telling the Truth, But I'm Lying by Bossy Igby, The Yellow House by Sarah Broom, Letters to a Young Poet, The Darlings by Christina Alger, and it was Cheryl Strayed that was actually featured in this, and she actually came up with some doozies, but there's not one book that stands out as a great book. I've read a bunch of good books, not too many that I would reread, but they were all collectively pretty good. And I also read a bookshop in Berlin, The Tattoos of Auschwitz. I've read a lot of pretty good books, but none really great. So I'm going to have to leave that and maybe revisit that at a later date. Books that are my guilty pleasure are the entire Sophie Kinsella Shopaholic series. I loved every last one of them. Has a book ever brought me closer to another person or come between you? No, not really. I have several good friends, and maybe have felt since I've released my own self-published work that it's brought me closer to several of my family members, like my cousin Viva and her mom. Uh, what's the most interesting thing learned from a book recently? I found out about the fallacy of Reconstruction and how it was doomed from the beginning, and it also coincided with the rise of white supremacy and the Klan. Um, how through my reading of Ida the Sword Among Lions, how every time I actually am finding out more important people that I never heard of and situations that I could never imagine just from reading this one biography of this amazing woman. But there was a large and firmly middle class African American community in Wilmington, North Carolina, the late 19th, early 20th century, and they were probably burned out by their own customers. It seems like the black businessmen had it on lock, the restaurants and tailor shops and a lot of other entrepreneurial endeavors, and their customers probably ran them out on a rail. What moves me most in a work of literature? Humor in spite of weird circumstances, and of course, allowing suspension. The story's so good that my disbelief is suspended easily. The best book received as a gift. It's my book of lighthouses that my friend Janelle gave me for a birthday present a couple of years ago. Me as a young reader, I was voracious and I read everything from sides of food boxes, Stephen King, Alex Haley, and Julie Blume. And if I could organize a literary party with 3 writers alive or dead, who would I invite? I would definitely invite Sophie Kinsella of Shopaholic fame, Philippa Gregory, a British author that got me hooked on royalty in her historical fiction about royalty, and Oyinkan Birthwait, my sister, the serial killer, for obvious reasons. She is of Nigerian or Kenyan descent, and she brings that society's norms overlap with a sensibility to um, a unique sensibility to an American audience. Her book actually, I really like the book jacket, but I also like the premise of the book and what true African society considers beauty. And her sister, who she, as the oldest sister, was supposed to protect at all costs. It seems like when the sister tried to conform to attracting the perfect mate, when she got tired of him, she just killed him. I thought that was actually fascinating. And how she was hiding out, a serial killer was hiding out in plain sight and protected, just because that was the norm of the family. So, and I think all of them would be really good conversationalists and would look at life at a uniquely different perspective. And we would eat well, and we would just, it would be just a fascinating party. So I usually boycott Valentine's Day for obvious reasons. I usually grab some takeout, get something to drink, and then I hide away from rom-coms and sappy couples. And if it really wasn't for my cousin's birthday, I really wouldn't wish anybody happiness on Valentine's Day at all. But this year was actually different. After I sent out my perfunctory Valentine Day emojis, I slept through it because I was particularly tired. I didn't get any sleep the previous night, and I worked and got my numbers up for that day. And I did do my usual avoidance of the day in particular because no one in Tennessee can actually drive, nor can they drive in North Carolina. I did not feel like being out with potentially arguing, sappy couples trying to put a positive spin on a day that is given too much hype. And I did not know, or I wanted to watch this particular movie in the comfort of no screaming kids or goofy couples. So I decided to go to the movies the next day at 11:30, which is the primo time to watch any movie in the stadium seating at the AMC. Issa Rae of Insecure and Little and Lakeith Stanfield of Atlanta and Sorry to Bother You. They connect in a romance where a woman must learn from the secrets of her mother's past if she's to move forward and allow herself to be loved. The famed photographer who is Issa Rae's character, Christina Eames, dies and leaves her daughter, Mae Morton, Issa, hurt and angry and full of questions. It seems as if that she had a really strained relationship with her mother. She finds a photograph tucked away in a safe deposit box, and letters to her real father, who is extraordinary because the man she thought was her real father was actually her stepfather. And as she delves deeper into her mother's early life, she actually meets a rising star journalist, Michael Block, which is Lakeith Stanfield. One of the things that actually struck me about the movie is the couple that is portrayed by, what's his name, Little Rel, and I can't remember the other actor. But and also between Issa Rae and Lakeith Stanfield is just the chemistry that they have with each other. I thoroughly enjoyed this particular movie. I didn't think it was just completely sappy, and because it really wasn't. It was just like a bunch of smart people, how they just make really stupid life decisions, and how they could have missed each other and missed out on a chance of true love if they hadn't taken a moment to really realize what their motives were, what their hang-ups were, and just work through them. This movie was actually produced by Will Packer of Girls Trip and the writer-director Stella Meiji of The Weeknd and the Gene of Joneses. I can't even remember. I don't think I've actually seen either one of those movies. But her screenplay is a sweeping love story about forgiveness and finding the courage to seek the truth, no matter where it may lead you. So I give this movie all the Rotten Tomatoes just because it's a great, great movie and it's a must see. See it by yourself, see it with girlfriends, see it with your mate. It is not the typical sappy love movie, and what was more powerful that the couples were straight up African American, but they actually had vibe and cohesion. Now on to what's playing in the background. I wasn't so sure when I saw the previews about High Fidelity because I've been binge watching several African American structured podcasts. It's not podcasts. Well, I listen to several African American podcasts, and I'm an African American podcaster. But when I saw the previews of this on Hulu between my binge watching Living Single, I was completely shocked when I started doing a little bit of research. Usually, most new shows, a Johnny come lately, and I only watch them once they've been out for years, like You or Pose or Euphoria. And unless I'm told about it on by another socially aware and woke podcaster, like Ratchet and Respectable or my favorite, The Read. But High Fidelity took me by surprise because there was an article on Zoe Kravitz of Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet, the issue that's their kid. Is based on the 1995 book by Nick Hornsby, in which coming of age of a white male in the middle of London. She flips it to starring her as a indie vinyl bookseller in modern day Brooklyn. There's a authentic feel to all of the characters. And it's nothing like the one-dimensional characters, and I believe it's HBO's Girls. There is cross and likability and realness about each one of these characters. She's trying to show how in true love, sometimes smart girls do really some dumb ish. She opens up and she's begging someone to stay who obviously wants to go. And then she runs through, and she takes the first couple of episodes, she has to stay and cycle through all of the loss of her first 5 great loves, including Mac, the last guy that she breaks up with. She ends up hooking up like the next day or within a several months, I guess time really doesn't flow when you're heartbroken. Well, but she hooks up with this really nice guy named Clyde who drives a Prius. Um, and she ends up treating him and being kind of a dick to him, even though he kind of messed up. He kind of bailed on her because he said his car was getting towed, and then he had to come back to get his phone. And then they ended up going out on a date and having several other whimsical encounters throughout the subsequent episodes. But she basically breaks from the original story in that she's a mixed race girl dating different types of guys in Brooklyn, New York. And her list of the worst breakups also includes females, which is a homage to the sexual fluidity that characterizes the youth of later generations. She goes through the list in which she realized that she was blaming the hookups for bailing on her, but then she comes to the realization that maybe it does take two for a breakup, but she also realized that she also benefited from the breakups themselves. And sometimes it really wasn't all of her fault, like how most men and women actually beat up on themselves, and they realize and sometimes that they do. We're introduced to other cast members besides Clyde. Mac makes a reappearance. We meet Simon, the quiet homosexual, who ends up coming out on, that's one of her great love loss, Charisse, the twerking, curvy African-American female who does twerk to British pop bands from the 90s, who are her friends and employees. And then there is the whole coming of age and realizations of your own shortcomings and just complete craziness. The only thing that really makes me sad is that this is actually a great and well-written series, but there are only 10 episodes, and I can't wait. And I'm not sure of when the next 10 episodes are actually going to drop, but I think I'm going to definitely need to check that out. I'm excited about all of the layers and how emotionally charged the entire series is. If the few that I've seen so far, which is I think the first 7, are any indication. And again, I give this a big up, and a must look at. And I would suggest making sure that you pay attention because it's a combination of multiple layers of drama, but also some of this movie. She is a record store owner, which actually makes sense. I mean, her dad is one of the biggest rock stars that ever was. Um, and she looks just like a young, and even now, a very not high Lisa Bonet. And it's obvious that this kid is talented, but just the musical selection throughout every episode are just amazing. And it makes me want to take a look at and add to my own record collection. Again, you guys have to watch High Fidelity. Make sure you're seated with a cocktail in hand or a beer and pay attention to the details and little nuances of this new series that is Hulu specific. And this brings me to an end of another episode of TNFro is reading and watching. And I hope you have enjoyed this episode just as much as I have enjoyed producing it. And I'm actually going to navigate to my Podbeam statistics page because in order for you to be noticed by any advertiser or patron, you actually have to put out content. And it is crazy that in the last 30 days, my visibility and viewability is up like 132.4%. I'm up to 760 downloads, well on my way to the 1,000 downloads that I have wanted, where I need and want to be, and I'm well on my way of meeting that goal by the end of this month. And I'm just looking at where my audience is streaming from. And big shout out not only to the southeastern part of the United States, but also to, evidently they like me in Spain, Saudi Arabia, and Sweden has been added to the pack. Most of my downloads are still concentrated in the great state of Tennessee. Thus, my moniker, TNFro is reading, and they're listening to me in my home state. I think it's exciting that I am saying something that people are wanting to listen to. And I hope, just as my reading encouraged me to look up and research other things and look for great movies, I'm hopeful that my passion project is actually feeding some void in a listener's life. I use this as a form of therapy and a creative outlet for all of my energy. But if you're struggling and don't have the same type of platform, and you have some serious depression and anxiety issues or some type of addiction, please don't suffer in silence. You can call 1-800-273-8255 to speak to one of the counselors that can talk you off of that edge, as well as there's an online chat at suicidepreventionoutline.org/chat. If you have issues with vodka, you just can't take one cocktail, you can also dial 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357 for 24/7 help anywhere you have a signal. There's always TalkSpace and Doctor on Demand, which you can actually partake in the privacy of your car or office. This journey is hard, and it's okay to ask for help. Don't forget to navigate to DellsAngelsInc.com for all special offers and updates on nerd news. If you want to leave me a non-trolly voicemail or even an email message, you can do so at TNFroisreading@gmail.com or leave a 2-minute non-trolly message at 423-463-0658. If you're tired of freeloading and you want to contribute to premium content, please navigate to patreon.podbean.com/thetalkingfro, or you can leave me a tip at paypal.me/FeliciaDAI. And I hope you have enjoyed this episode of TNFro is Reading. Join me next time as I bring you more celebrations in Black excellence, and also clearing out my side table and reading to you what I'm finding interesting in today's world. And as always, I hope you enjoy this, or have enjoyed this, as much as I have enjoyed creating it for you. Thank you and have a great night.